GM everyone, welcome back to another episode of Touchgrass Podcast. Today I have Will from Hashgraph Ventures. We were supposed to record this last week, but we had rescheduled. But super excited, and it's always exciting to record when we have some god candles going on the other side of the screen. But yeah, welcome to the show, Will. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Before we get into the markets, what's happening, and your fund and what you guys are doing, I recently saw that you announced a rebrand. Is that like a shift in focus of your thesis in crypto or anything that has changed high level? What was the rebrand about?
Yeah, so just super briefly, Hashgraph Ventures, it has existed in name in the past. As the name suggests, there is a tie to Hedera. It's one of the top L1s in the space. It's been around multiple cycles. In the past, there's different people, working under that brand. We've got a new team that I helped put together. I was brought in. We've got 4 guys for the most part focusing on this. And so the rebrand has really just helped solidify it's a brand new team. The focus is just broader than in the past. Obviously, it's a layup for us to assist folks to build on Hedera. There's a lot of interesting things you can do there, but it's really a broad crypto plus AI focus now.
And how long have you been at Hashgraph now?
So the new entity, I think it was announced. It was announced at Abu Dhabi Finance Week. So we've got a guy on the ground there. And we started closing deals in December. It was our first one. We've closed 4 deals, and I joined in November of last year.
Awesome. Do you want to give a brief intro on yourself before Hashgraph Ventures?
Yeah. So my background, maybe not too many folks, but I started out in banking. So I moved to New York in 2019. I actually moved from China. That's my fun fact. So I moved from China to New York. I worked at a boutique bank started by a relatively well-known banker. Did that for a couple of years. And I was putting all my own money into Bitcoin and Bitcoin alts at the time, starting in 2020. I started looking for full-time jobs in crypto. So I was one of the, handful of people across the industry at the time. I took a giant pay cut and started working for Avalabs out of Brooklyn. So that was a fantastic experience. That's really where I built a massive network. Those first, 6+ months was just grinding Telegram and Twitter every single day. Met a bunch of funds, over 100+ funds, hundreds of founders in that time. And that's where I got relatively technical and got great operating experience. From there, I actually worked at a boutique crypto venture fund and market maker called Varus Capital. I was first check in to a few deals there that did super well. Some of them just very quickly did super well. And with that experience, I ended up launching my own fund, which is Third Earth Capital. It still exists. But that was fully deployed. Sub 10 million. It was just me. And that's when this opportunity came along to take everything that I've worked on and put together a larger team managing 100 million. And that's Hashgraph Ventures.
And just for background on the fund as well, do you just do venture or do you use like a mix of liquid and public and private markets? What does that look like?
So Hashgraph Ventures Fund 1, it's all VC, it's all early stage. It's crypto plus AI. There's actually a couple of AI specific deals we're looking at that we like a lot. Nothing else at the moment. We can potentially get creative around public sale, things like that. We just haven't done that yet.
Got it. And another thing that you've mentioned that you've taken over since November, is that correct?
I joined in November. Joined as the head of venture, CIO, however you want to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much like the top, was it, right? And we've entered into this kind of downturn. How do you kind of describe your experience investing during this period? And everyone we see on Seed Crypto Twitter that venture capital has been drying up, all this, but I just saw a headline saying Han Ventures or someone raised $1 billion or something. How do you describe the landscape right now for VC?
Yeah, I think the main thing is I don't pay super close attention to what is the today's Bitcoin ETH price, etc. It's we're rarely mark to market pre TGE. I think the big difference is that crypto venture funding is just down across the board. It's been on a decline since 2021. I give some classic examples like the multi-unicorn OpenSea round and like just some of the crazy rounds that got done that should have never happened at valuations that were just way too high. And that actually impacts like the crypto market, I think, at like a pretty deep level. When LPs get burned, less funding flows into the space. And so we're still in, I think, this downward spiral of venture funding coming into the space. So that's more of what I think about. It just creates more opportunity for the folks that do have dry powder. I think, what's unique about us is we have a pretty cool team. The folks we all have operating experience within crypto. We're pretty chill folks. We don't, do anything too crazy. But the good thing is I don't have to necessarily pay attention to these 10% price swings or 40% BTC drawdowns.
Yeah, and I think we've been doing this VC series, right? And everyone was like, people got so rich in that series in that 2021 cycle that everyone was just shitting money, and how AI labs are shitting away their trillions of dollars for compute and whatnot. We kind of saw that, and also we saw where people were investing tens of billions into companies like in verticals like gaming and stuff that led to nowhere, and that kind of capital was misused, misallocated in a big way. Uh, but in terms of like themes over this last 6 months, well, one of the things I've noticed is I think everyone says this whenever kind of this bear market kind of thing happens, where this time feels different, right? Like everyone's like, this time is different, coins are not going to go up, and this is dead, and all that kind of sentiment. Whereas everyone's already declaring like DeFi is dead and these kinds of things. Do you see it that way, where we just have these some consensus based happening? We're not thinking like believing in something. That kind of thing is no longer there in crypto. And what do you think kind of requires for people to believe again?
I gotcha. I'll try and let me know if this answers the point. In terms of like this cycle being different from the past, what is there to believe in? How do I feel about DeFi? I will say, on that last point, and I'll try and expand it to the others. I've always been pretty conservative around smart contract risk. I personally have always thought that security is a major bottleneck for the industry. Unlike the traditional banking space where you have to show up to in person at a branch with your ID to deposit a check. In some cases, France has seen this horrific spat of like kidnappings, right? This is an extreme case, right? Or you open up your wallet in public, God forbid someone gets a picture of your private key, right? Those are maybe slightly more extreme cases, but it highlights the issue of security as a bottleneck. And so even within DeFi, I've done fewer deals. I've actually done maybe an equal number of deals around security, both smart contract security. I've done a peer-to-peer auditing firm like a Cantina, Spearbit, Sherlock competitor called Hyacinth. I think they have the best product in the space. I've also invested in an OPSEC firm called Groom Lake. They work with major chain foundations to monitor ecosystems, do exploit response. So I do think a big issue is still around security. And with AI getting smarter and smarter, they're only going to find additional like of these day zero exploits, right? So I do think in the past there have been how do you say, like maybe bad management, like the Celsius, Voyagers, et cetera, the FTXs of the world. Moving forward, there will continue to be those, maybe more sparse as the space has gotten smarter. But security is still a huge issue. And so I've always been very, very bullish on DeFi. DeFi is never going anywhere because it's simply a better product than TradFi. The problem has been on the security aspect. And so I'm still very bullish on DeFi, but again, it comes in waves, and ultimately it's going to do extremely well.
Are you looking into companies that kind of reignite the yield kind of situation with DeFi, where what's currently being offered is not worth the risk? Is that an area of focus for Hashgraph?
I mean, if we're looking at like DeFi projects or like quote unquote RWA platforms, like anyone that's offering yield, like a lot of these neobanks, like they have like a yield product. I mean, to your point, like we want to examine like where that yield comes from. Maybe to a separate point, like I think less about how competitive is this with T-bills, because I think ultimately like you'll just make more money on chain than T-bills, because just there's more risk. Like you just have to pay more to borrow USDC on chain. In general, that's not always the case. There was a brief period, I want to say in 2023, where people were really excited about T-bills because yields were so low on chain. Just people got wiped in 2022, so just utilization was lower. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think DeFi is going to have far more opportunities than off chain.
Gotcha. And what about some of these other bets that feel very, very consensus in terms of prediction markets, perp dexes, and some of these other stablecoin projects? Like we have like dozen of these, and it seems like we're getting a new variation where one offers one specific thing with privacy, one offers more speed, or very kind of different versions of this we have seen for a couple of years as well. Like, what do you think about those teams where the concentration has become so much, even though it probably ends up with the same two or three winners in the end?
Yeah, I typically sidestep anything that has. Typically, I will say we did a stealth investment around at prediction markets. There's like I'd say like a tier one fund in that round with us as well. They already have interest in a Series A, so like that one's like pretty exciting. It's like rare when someone can kind of thread the needle and go back to back on the fundraising side. So that's like just great signal. They're not public yet, but I think they have the potential to be a massive like top three prediction market, maybe definitely top five. But usually we are passing on those. And in the cases where we are investing in what I'll call a flavor of the month is when the founder does have an unfair advantage. So in this case, just an extreme wealth of experience around options trading, some very strategic angels and strategics coming into this first round. So that's where we're able to get over the hump at IC with that. In terms of other things like neobanks, stable coins, like those are broad enough spaces where we'll just dig through the layers of like service providers in those spaces. We've done one at a Hashgraph Ventures called Debit with a Y. So we want to find ways to get exposure to these things. It's not necessarily like at like that, retail facing level. It might be somewhere else in the stack.
Gotcha. Related to that, and this might be a small tangent, but I mean, we have seen recently Hyperliquid go live with their predict outcome markets with just the BTC market for now. There's like this discussion going on where is Hyperliquid like a competitor to Polymarket and Kalshi? I feel like they currently operate with two different audiences and demographic kind of thing, and I feel like everyone's like Polymarket doesn't have a moat, and I was like, no, they do, right? And where do you stand on this? Where Hyperliquid has this incredible foundational engine where you can just plug this kind of thing into every different part finance stack, and then immediately you can turn on the revenue engine for that. And it's like Robinhood, someone said they have like 10 different sources of revenue, and everything has the opportunity to become 100 billion per year kind of thing. Where do you stand on that, especially as we're talking about prediction markets?
Yeah, I mean, let me know if this answers your question, but I think Hyperliquid, they did something. They did many things very intelligently. I think this whole I think they're kind of expanding like horizontally. They're just adding new markets. They're adding new products. They kind of already own the entire stack, which I think was brilliant. Fortunately for them, they controlled distribution of their token extremely well, and that's created like a very virtuous flywheel. And Polymarket has done the next best thing, which is they have not launched a token yet, and so there's nothing for for people to gripe about, because a token in a perfect world, it's a user acquisition tool, and you get it in the hands of the right folks, and it reinforces either user behavior or attracting new users, driving new revenue to the product. I think when Polymarket launches a token, like we'll see how well that goes. It's a blessing and a curse in this industry, right? It's a feature and not a bug, usually. Either way, how it turns out. Polymarket, unlike Hyperliquid, they launched on Polygon. So I'm going to use the phrase "quote unquote" technical debt. When you launch in someone else's chain, you ultimately become subject to the performance of that chain. So whether they're block reorgs, lower latency, anything along those lines. And so they do have to move at some point to their own chain, which I think they discussed publicly, whether it's an L2 or an L1. But frankly, I think any product, and this is maybe to your point, any product that has strong distribution, and especially if they have like a great holder base, they can kind of launch whatever product they want. I mean, they're just one of those few projects where they have enough leverage and liquidity to kind of do anything. So,
do you think they should launch their own thing or go on another fast high performance chain? If you were to kind of, if you were to be an advisor to them or someone like that, what would you kind of say? Build your own thing or go a much better blockchain?
For Polymarket, they're so big. I mean, they could easily just launch their own thing. I'd say that's my one sentence answer.
That makes sense.
There's no reason to build somewhere else at that point.
That makes sense. Well, sort of coming back to, my internet just came back. So I'm finally back into this pod, like halfway through. But Will, I want to pick up something that you said at the start. You joined the fund in November. The fund's only been alive for, with the new mandate for a very short time. I think something that would help the founders are listening to this pod or feeding it into an LLM to sort of figure out how to pitch to you guys better. Is there like a fund thesis that you guys are focused on in terms of verticals, or how does what I'm trying to understand is how does the IC work? And what are the sort of considerations that you guys have within, I heard that you talked about, founder mentality. Is there anything on the vertical side that you guys look into, or any sort of vertical of founders that you're looking to talk to more?
Look, I'd say we look at every single deck. So unfortunately, there are a lot. Just right now, there's a lot of folks I haven't closed the loop on. But I will say we open every single deck as a team. I think that's very unique for our fund, where we get on a call every week. We go through every single deck we've received that week. So if you send it to me in a DM or anyone on our team, it was opened and it was looked at. To your question, we look at everything crypto, and to a lesser extent, AI. Ideally, it's like a crypto native founder who found a product that works really well in AI. Maybe they have another AI technical co-founder. But we're a crypto native fund, full stop. In terms of verticals, like I said, we're totally agnostic. There are certain things I'm paying closer attention to, like stablecoin rails, broadly speaking. So whether that's payments, services, like a stablecoin native bank, we're looking at some pretty interesting opportunities. Also geography agnostic. We have folks in the Middle East. We have folks mostly on the East Coast of the US. And then in terms of what I like to look for, in terms of pitching us, I do like to, ideally there's a deck we can review in advance. I'm typically looking at a few slides, problem, solution, team. Problem, solution, and team slide. If there's some sort of more technical architecture piece, especially if it's a middleware thing, I do like to understand that. I like to understand the regulatory, piece to it. You don't need to be fully buttoned up as an idea stage business. You just need to know what you need. So we look at all that very closely in terms of an IC process. We do have an IC. There are 7 folks on that. Some of them are outside advisors attached to Hedera. It's just simple majority wins. We can schedule that ad hoc, and we try and move super quickly.
That makes sense. And then, well, we've had this conversation on the pod with the last investors that were on. A lot of them talked about the transition from early crypto days, let's say DeFi summer, to now. Right now, you said you're excited about stablecoin rails. I cannot imagine someone saying that back during DeFi summer. You also said that when you were starting off investing, you had a couple of quick wins. Has there been sort of a change in how you think as an investor from that time to now, where earlier it was majorly token businesses, now it's more real business with crypto rails?
I would summarize my response by saying I think we've maybe had 2 distinct retail cycles since 2020. There was a run up into 2022 where retail got obliterated, and then there was a run up into 2025, early 2025, where retail got obliterated. The key events, 2022 doesn't need to be explained, but 2025, I think we had this incredible mass onboarding event of the Trump meme coin, and they just got obliterated, after Melania, Libra, and everything that happened. I think that's just massively damaging for the space. And to your point, when there is a huge influx of retail participants, tokens do better. It's more fun. The Telegrams, the Discords are alive. Like the entire space just feels great. I had more fun in 2024 than maybe ever, especially like Q3, Q4. A lot of that, I think Pump Fund was actually a massive benefit for the space, bringing in retail. Unfortunately, like the whole meme, we just got extracted by a sitting U.S. president to an extent, which was not on my bingo card. And we also had the Bitcoin ETF. Like honestly, it was going extremely well. So if Melania Libra had not happened, and maybe if Trump played out very differently or it didn't even happen, I think we'd still be in a time where we can invest in like really token focused plays, shall we say. The reality is, like I said earlier, I don't really pay attention to like what is Bitcoin price today, but I do have to think about what do like the market participants look like today. Right now, I need to invest in businesses that can generate revenue. Like I'm okay being 12 months early, but I can't be too early to the point where a business is going to die before their next round. So I have to invest in things that like are actually going to get use. In a lot of use cases today, getting traction are around these services businesses. So we'll do pure equity deals.
That makes sense.
That retail is now trading Korean stocks and peptides and semis right now.
Yeah. My group chat, we have both of those guys. Yeah.
And then Will, since now I would say every investor is now focused on revenue, do you have a take on the buyback stuff? Like is token buybacks net positive for a project?
Oh gosh. Not all buybacks are created equal is what I'd say. Like I think Pump Fund just announced like a huge buyback and burn. I'm typically not a big fan of burns. It's like you turned hard dollars into nothing. Like you turned US dollars into like you literally like I think there are better ways to spend that money. Like you can either reinvest that into the business or you can give some of those tokens back in some other form. It doesn't have to be immediate, right? So buyback and burn I've always been relatively bearish on. I could come up with some examples where I think it makes sense. But like these massive burns, like I just I'll give you one good, like I think BNB, like they do these huge buyback and burns, like that's fine. They're like a 50 plus, I don't know what their valuation is, tens of billions of dollars, right? Like they're doing a set amount. It's like a known thing, but if you come out and surprise people, like it's not going to be properly priced. I think like, I'm not sure on the pump. I'm not a huge like community member there. I'm not sure if that was anticipated or not. But if you come out and surprise people with a giant burn, like the market's not going to properly value that. And inevitably, you're going to upset the community who would have wanted a say in how that was distributed, or at least a timeline, something like that. In terms of revenue, I do think like in general, like pre-revenue can be a good thing, right? It's a bit of a meme, but the longer you stay pre-revenue, it can help you raise money. But ultimately, like you need a path to generating revenue. And so we have been focused on how, who's going to pay for this? That's a question I ask. Who's going to pay for this?
Yeah. Another thing that we always ask investors right now is, you mentioned you're also investing in AI, you're investing in OPSEC and security stuff, and you're also interested in stablecoin rails. But those are all like kind of consensus. Like everyone's like kind of eyeballs are on that. What's one thing that's no one's paying attention to right now, but is something you're slowly building conviction in? What's that one contrarian bet for you right now?
Look, I'd say like things that I was looking at and, that are, I don't even know if security is consensus, like broadly speaking. I mean, like, I think people agree it's important, but and like, I'll say that, like for years, I was like, if you're a privacy builder, send me a message. I said this for years. The problem with some of these, let's call them verticals, is you still need to build like a sustainable business model around it. So yeah, like I was tweeting from the hilltops, like, please send me, privacy founders, where are you? The problem was, people still have to pay for whatever. Like, I'll give you an example. I'll give you one example, right? I met these guys. I really liked them. They're building a private RPC. It's in the privacy vertical. Ultimately, I just couldn't get over the hump of why would someone use this instead of just using a VPN? Like the value prop wasn't clear enough. And so, yes, I've been looking at privacy related deals, security related deals for years, but you still need to find a business with that can, that has a business model that makes sense. And so we are looking super closely at doing one privacy related deal imminently out of Hashgraph Ventures. I don't want to, put the cart in front of the horse. I want to get that deal closed. But then security, I found 2 deals, which is Groom Lake and Hyacinth. But it's just hard. Stablecoins, it's a lot easier to envision and create these business models, and it's a lot. They all can be evaluated, but there's just a lot more going on there. There's a lot more revenue flying around. There's built-in yield in a lot of these things, right? So it's easy to draw the line from point A to point B in terms of how we're going to make money.
Yeah, and I would say with privacy and security in particular as verticals, the timeline seems to take more attention when something happens. Like it's just not normal day-to-day conversations about how do we get better with these things, which I think is getting better now. But we'll see how long that sort of continues on the timeline and how long people still care about these things in practice. Will, last question for you. This is sort of a fun one. I'd say we've gotten a lot of interesting responses to this one. In all these years of investing, has there been a project or a pre-seed deal or a seed deal that sort of you missed and it's sort of kept you up at night? Is there that one deal darling that you think about often?
I'd say there are no deals that I think about too often. I'd say, for me, fortunately, I was a massive hype beast in the past. And I wasn't flipping every Supreme drop, but I was flipping Yeezys bad. I had the turtle doves, I was flipping a lot. What I learned from that is there's always the next drop. All right. If I miss a deal, if I get cut out of a deal, there's always the next deal. So fortunately, it's kind of shaped whatever, the 13 brain cells that I have around, I can be a patient guy. I will say though, there were deals that I did not do. I'd have to check the messages. I think 100K allocation into the Grass pre-seed at 10 million or something like that. Grass, I think at peak was 2 billion. Maybe it was pre-unlocks, but the pitch was just different. And we just didn't get it done. And there was another deal CoinFlow raised tens of millions recently. Some of these deals though, I worked at another fund and part of it was just timeline to execution. I just wasn't able to close fast enough. And that's actually a big factor in me launching my own fund, which was Third Earth Capital. It's just me. I think every founder I've worked with there, they love the experience, which is kind of my hope. I can just wire out of my own account. And Hashgraph Ventures, we're trying to replicate that, but larger scale. So that's what we're all about. The team, we all have crypto operating experience. The guys, Jeff and Arjun, they're in Miami right now. We've got another guy on the ground in UAE. And yeah, I think if you want to work with interesting folks who have experience building crypto businesses, you want to come with us. And last thing I'll say is check sizes have been in the 1 to 2 million range. We can go smaller, we can lead rounds. We can work out together. Yeah, we can spot you at the gym. All right. I like to say we're people you want to travel with, hang out with, and
those are the best partners usually. But yeah, this was awesome. That's Will from Hashgraph Ventures. Thank you so much, Will, for your time today.
Thank you.